On to some breaking updates. A day after she appeared before the Enforcement Directorate, a day after she failed to answer on her investments and properties, and a day after she failed to detail her income tax returns, Rhea Chakrabarti is now trying to script drama with claims over a note that Sushant left in her diary. Rhea Chakrabarti has released 2 photographs of her diary that she claims to be hers. The prime accused in the Sushant death case says the note penned in her notebook is by Sushant thanking her and her family members. Shravan Sen now joining us with more details on the same. Shravan, take us through the contents of what now Rhea is claiming is a note that was left by Sushant Singh Rajput, because certainly as far as yesterday's questioning is concerned, she failed to answer all the important questions pertaining to the case.
Well, this is yet another stunt that has been pulled by Rhea Chakrabarti at this point in time. Suddenly you see that she's pulled up what she calls it the diary of Sushant Singh Rajput. And now she essentially claims that the only possession she has is a bottle from the film merchandise, if I may say so. The fact of the matter is that there have been some serious allegations that have been leveled against Rhea Chakrabarti. When she's essentially talking about what she has in her possession, she's also trying to respond to the allegation that has been leveled against her, especially by the Enforcement Directorate, about how she's been controlling all the accounts of Sushant Singh Rajput. And the fact that she's got prime properties in her name when her net worth has been far lower. And that's the reason why perhaps this entire stunt has been pulled by Rhea Chakrabarti and her legal team, trying to get some sort of sympathy, if that's what she's trying to hint at, by putting out an alleged page of Sushant Singh Rajput's diary. First of all, one has to even verify whether at all it is the very diary of the late actor. That it itself is not known. This is a claim that has been made by Rhea Chakrabarti at this point in time, suggesting that this is the page from Sushant Singh Rajput's diary, given the fact that most of the diaries were actually supposed to be seized by the Mumbai police. So how exactly does she have those diaries in her possession? That in itself is one big question, because remember, Siddharth Pitani, flatmate of Sushant Singh Rajput, had basically made this claim that when the police was at the spot, 20 diaries were essentially handed over by Siddharth Pitani and the others who were present at that point in time to the Mumbai police. So how exactly did Rhea Chakrabarti, who was not there at the crime spot, how did she actually get her hands on those diaries itself? Now, those are several questions that one can certainly raise, but the timing of releasing this sort of a page from the alleged diary of Sushant Singh Rajput in itself gives you a clear indication of the stunts that she's trying to pull off.
All right. Shravan, is she claiming this diary to be hers or Sushant Singh Rajput's? Because these are the only 2 pages that we're looking at, a gratitude list that she claims Sushant Singh Rajput had penned down, thanking her and her family members, and not just that, also going on to say that this is the only property of Sushant Singh Rajput that I have. But just give us a little more clarity about the diary. Whose diary is this really?
Well, in fact, this happens to be Sushant Singh Rajput's diary is what she essentially claims. Now, whether at all that is actually Sushant Singh Rajput's diary or it is perhaps Rhea Chakrabarti's diary in which the late actor had penned down certain thoughts, that is still not very clear at this point in time. Having said that, the questions would certainly be raised. If at all it is the diary of the late actor, then how did she actually get her hands on those diaries? Because those diaries were supposed to have been seized by the Mumbai police to begin with. And secondly, if it is actually her diary in which Sushant Singh Rajput had penned down his thoughts, that the fact of the matter is that why release it just a day after the Enforcement Directorate actually questioned her about what she calls is in her possession. The reason why she's putting this out also, and particularly saying that this is all that she has in her possession of Sushant Singh Rajput, that is trying to hint at the allegations or respond in some manner of the allegations that have been leveled against her as to how she has basically had control over his possessions, be it prime properties or for that matter even the bank accounts. Because remember, the bank account statements that were earlier accessed by Republic TV and also which is now being examined by the Enforcement Directorate gives you a clear idea as to how Rhea Chakrabarti had a lot of expenses, and these expenses were essentially borne by the late actor. So these are some very serious allegations that have been leveled against Rhea Chakrabarti, and now suddenly you look at this sort of a response that has come in.
So another drama that is being staged by Rhea Chakrabarti a day after she was grilled by the Enforcement Directorate for over 8 hours. Shravan, now we do know that she could not give out the answers as far as property matters are concerned, as far as income tax returns are concerned. What about the companies floated by Sushant Singh Rajput, which have Shovik and Indrajit as directors as well? What about that? Do we have any word on Rhea Chakrabarti responding to those questions yesterday?
Well, as far as Rhea Chakrabarti is concerned and the questioning that actually took place at the Enforcement Directorate's office here in Mumbai, what we have picked up from our sources within the agency is that, one, she hasn't been able to explain the kind of transactions that have taken place. One basic question that was put before her was the fact that her net worth was roughly about 14 lakh rupees if you simply go by the income tax returns. What the Enforcement Directorate was constantly harping on is with regards to two prime properties. These two prime properties are way above her net worth value, and that is the reason why this question was asked as to who exactly funded Rhea Chakrabarti to buy these prime properties, because these properties are basically one in her name, the other property happens to be in her family member's name. With regards to the companies that we are talking about, this is where she has been a director along with her brother, companies that were basically floated by Sushant Singh Rajput. At least two companies have already been examined by the Enforcement Directorate, and questions were certainly asked about these companies and the directorship of these companies. What is not very clear right now from the Enforcement Directorate as to whether it all they have made any headway on the company front, because remember there's one more company which is based out of Delhi, which my sources have been indicating that the Enforcement Directorate hasn't really examined so far. So in all likelihood, you would expect the Enforcement Directorate to issue another summon to Rhea Chakrabarti, where she would once again be grilled by the Enforcement Directorate about another set of questioning, about another line of questioning that would take place. And this perhaps is what the Enforcement Directorate believes is the clincher, which they are not willing to reveal at this point in time as the investigation is underway.